Great. Thanks, Ron. Really appreciate it. We're so excited to have everyone join today. It's a beautiful, what day is it today? Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Man, time flies by.
It's not that beautiful. It's kind of cloudy outside.
Yeah, well, days fly. I just had a boy a month ago, and time is just it's every day is just a day passed by. So, appreciate it, and it's always exciting to have the meetup members come and listen to us. I always, one of the things we like to do here is just keep this informal, fun, casual. So, send us feedback, keep the chat vibrant. Balaji here is really excited to be here as well. Balaji, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. So my name is Balaji Rajam, and I'm a customer engineer with the Google Cloud team, and I also focus quite a bit on security as well. So very excited to be here. This is my first time presenting on the meetup.
Yeah, so this is Balaji's first time presenting. He co-hosted a couple of the previous meetups, but he's obviously done a lot of work on security, and he does a lot of executive briefings here at Google for a lot of our customers. There's no one better that I could get than Balaji, and I guess that's
no pressure, right?
no pressure at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, so chat's open. Keep the questions coming, and we'll just go get started. I mean, today we're just here to talk about Google Cloud Platform. The security. What really makes us different? Why Google when it comes to security? What are the things that we're doing internally to keep our customers protected from all the bad people out there?
All right. So we're going to talk about security and privacy in the cloud. So this is a bold claim which we are making, that Google Cloud is the most secure platform for professionals. Hopefully, through the course of the presentation, I will try and build a case for this. So one of the key things for us is we focus very much on transparency, because key concern for the customers is I don't own any of the infrastructure. Once I put my data and my applications on the cloud, do I lose control over it? But that is where we come in, and the terms and conditions of our agreements and everything which we do is about putting the customer in control and making it compliant. And we focus on security that works. We are not looking at security as something which you have to add on, something which is just native to the platform, to every product you use on the Google Cloud Platform. Interestingly, one of the things which you see in the slide is the USB key which we use as a security key for two-factor authentication. All of us at Google use something like this, and now it's actually available for customers as well. So you, as a customer, because ultimately when you use the Google Cloud, it is your data center in the cloud, and you want to make access to that as secure as possible. So you don't want to just rely, if you don't want to just rely on a username password, you can enable it to use two-factor authentication and use these kind of YubiKeys. So for the past 15 years, we have been building our own infrastructure. That means that probably everything apart from the processor, we build it. So right from the chipset, the OS, the applications is all created by Google. So from that standpoint, we literally own the entire stack. Our network layer is completely proprietary. If any of you visited us at Google Next, you would have actually seen one of our Jupyter switches sitting out in the open, and people were fascinated with the kind of performance it can offer. So the Google's purpose-built switch is around 100 times faster than anything else which is available in the market today. So that is one of the reasons we are able to do a lot of the things which we do in terms of how we manage our storage, how we manage our containers, how we manage our processing power, and so on. So we have the largest IP network. So we have 77 locations in 33 countries where you can have connectivity. So Google's backbone, we have our own underwater cables which run across continents. We have two cables which run from North America to Japan, and one or two more which run between North America and Europe, and there are many more coming. And these cables are even shark-proof, actually. There's actually a YouTube video out there of how we made that shark-proof. So
Yeah, I've seen it. It's pretty funny, and we'll have to send you the link of that. But I mean, Balaji, I mean, this is the network. We always talk about how great our network is, but why is our network so important to security?
one of the key things is if you once you are in a data center and the traffic which goes outside your data center, where does that traffic reside, right? Uh, for large organizations, when you have a multi-data center strategy and your traffic has to traverse between networks and whatnot, which network is it traversing on? Is it traversing on the private internet? Are you having to establish uh, VPN connections between data centers? That is vital. In our case, unless you are dealing with an external entity, nearly all of our traffic traverses our own network. Essentially, you are on Google-owned network, so that is where the security comes from.
Yeah, and maybe this has something to do with the DDoS. I know with distributed denial of service attacks, usually if the hacker can consume enough bandwidth, then pretty much a DDoS happens. Doesn't this have something to do with, being able to, I guess, address large DDoS attacks with the large network that we have?
Yes, because even though we talk about regions and the things how we are spread across the globe, it's ultimately because we own all of the network, it's one large network. And pretty much all of the traffic into Google is fronted by the Google front end, which essentially serves up, say, 25% of the world's traffic. So we are actually able to negate much more stronger attacks than some of other providers.
Mm. Okay. I mean, I know, and obviously I come in, I'm trying to be unbiased here. Like if I'm a customer and Balaji, you're talking to me, I'm obviously evaluating other cloud providers
Mhm.
like, the big names, right? I'm just going to say it, like Microsoft, Amazon. What's so different about what we do that is, maybe differentiated?
Hmm. Timely to go into my next slide. So, as we talked about our network, which is the largest IP data network in the world, and then the kind of spend we have in terms of our capex expenditure, 9.9 billion capex investment in 2015, and we serve 1 billion daily users. We account for 25% of the world's traffic. So, and each of these are consumer accounts. A lot of them are consumer accounts. So unless we are able to provide that kind of protection and security to those accounts, we will not be in business, right? Uh, and all our data is encrypted at rest and transit. And I also go back to one of the things which I mentioned earlier, how we build everything from the ground up, right? From except apart from the processor, everything else is things which we build, right? So we are never bound to a vendor for fixing a security flaw. We essentially have a quick turnaround on how we identify and can turn around on flaws.
Mhm.
So I think that becomes a key differentiator for us.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Gaurav, I hope you're pronouncing your name right, Gaurav, but the question is any impact of ransomware on Google data centers or the network? And it's funny because we just talked about that.
As of now, we haven't had any impact on that.
Mhm.
Um, I think there's a public statement being released. If you can find a link to it, we'll add it to the chat later.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know, I think the most recent one was a Microsoft
Microsoft relationship.
specific, yeah, for the
Yeah.
ransomware. I think the WannaCry, but yeah, so that's nothing that we know of, and it's really interesting because I know that we do hire like thousands of top security experts to. There's a reason why we are kind of the first ones to always identify vulnerabilities, just
Yep.
because we see so much traffic. I mean, we see how much of the traffic do we see on the
25% of the
yeah,
world's traffic.
that's
Yeah,
a lot of traffic. I mean,
that is a lot.
so what that means is we are, one of the first people to get exposed to a lot of these security vulnerabilities, and because of that, you'll always see announcements from Google about, hey, we found an exploit here, or we found some vulnerabilities there, and it's just really interesting. I mean, even before I worked at Google, I think Google was kind of the top enterprise companies out there exposing a lot of these.
Yes, and majority of Google had to be engineered to handle those kind of eventualities, right? Say a good example was the Heartbleed bug, which came up a few years back. Uh, Typically, when customers, most enterprise customers, had to go through this process of um, shutting down their VMs, updating the software, and bring it back up. We didn't have to do any of that because of the way we are engineered, because we don't even run VMs directly. We run VMs within containers. So that helps us contain the issues. And also we have capabilities around live migration, which allowed us to patch VMs and migrate stuff over without having to disrupt anything.
Yeah, I never thought about that. And that's something my customers actually talk about a lot is the ability to live migrate. I think traditionally live migration was a lot of VMware was really good at providing vMotion live migration. And with live migration on Google Cloud, it allows us to keep our customers up and running while updating, patching, and securing our hardware while we're all doing that. So we're able to keep everything updated with zero user impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And any data you store on the Google Cloud is completely encrypted, both in REST as well as transit. And by encryption, we don't mean that we just take this one data chunk and just encrypt it. It is never written to disk before it is encrypted to that level. And even we encrypt both at a software level as well as a hardware level. Both use at least AES 128 or 256 encryption, and both at a hardware level it's encrypted, and also when the file is written, it's encrypted as well. And the way we encrypt is also interesting. I'll go into that in this slide. Essentially, we don't take one file and just encrypt it as a whole. We take each file and encrypt it in chunks. Each of those files is broken up into chunks, and each file has something called data encryption key. And then each of those keys are wrapped in something called a key encryption key. And there's a whole chain of encryption which goes on. So what this means is if somebody gains access to the file system, they will need to know where the rest of the chunks are before they can even find the file pieces. And then they have to go through this complex process of how to get those keys and decrypt those files as well. So that actually, we will put a link to the encryption white paper in the chat window. I think people can read up on it. It's quite fascinating. I find it fascinating.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, is this so? I know that Google's main business, a lot of it is taking search data and catering it to your personal interests. And that's something that a lot of our Google Cloud Platform users have concerns about is, hey, are you looking at our data, right? What is your response to that?
So the response to that is twofold. One on the other side, one side, by the terms of service, we agree with customers. We will not look at your data until like there's a case where you want us to. Say, for instance, something is going wrong. You desperately want us to look at it to actually fix that issue. So that's the only case where we would look at your data. The second aspect is you can actually prevent us from looking at your data by using your own encryption keys. So we call them customer supplied encryption keys. So you bring those keys and you can actually use those to encrypt the data. So even if Google tried, Google won't be able to look at your data.
Yeah, that's actually, I totally forgot about that one. I know a lot of healthcare companies I work with are interested in that, obviously, because some genomics accounts that I work with, I mean, they're obviously have high sensitive data, and so they bring their own encryption keys so that basically they handle their own security. The only caveat to that is I think we tell customers that, hey, if you lose your key, I'm sorry,
Yes.
the data's gone. There's nothing we can do about it because we just these are your keys. So that's kind of the downfall.
So one of the things which does help with that to help customers manage keys is the cloud KMS, the key management server. So where customers can store their keys and rotate the keys and so on. So it gives them a place to manage their keys as well. That went in GA like last month or so. And these individual chunks are also distributed across our storage infrastructure. So it's not like we just created the chunks and just put them on one silo. It is distributed across the the Google's infrastructure. So gathering all those chunks and being able to decrypt it is going to be a challenging aspect for any hacker or something like that. And one thing which is not so one thing which is not kind of mentioned here is the Titan chip, which we announced during Google Next. I wish I had a slide for it. I don't.
Balaji, you're not coming prepared. What's going
Unfortunately,
on?
not. That's what's going on. So the Titan chip essentially is built into a lot of our hardware. So that chip act almost like an authentication or authorization mechanism within our data center. So when you plug in hardware, unless it has that chip, it won't be able to communicate with anything. It is so small that I think the Urs who was presenting was wearing it on his earring. So
Wow. So that's more like hardware security. How do we prevent maybe a bad agent from pretending to be our hardware? If they inserted maybe like a server in our data center somehow.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think that is sort of important because as we continue to expand and build out data centers in different regions, we obviously have areas that are more
sensitive.
Politically sensitive is a good way to say it. And so on that topic, how do we deal with customers, let's say, in these politically sensitive regions that want or that need their data to be in that specific geography? Do we have mechanisms to ensure that data doesn't leave there?
Yeah, so most of our software comes with settings for choosing a region where you can say, hey, the data has to reside within such and such region. Even with our storage, which even if you need to go multi-region storage with our GCS, Google Cloud Storage, you have an option of choosing your region, whether you want it to live in US or you want to live it in Europe or Asia. So you have a choice there as well. So most of our products will allow you to select a region and restrict your region. So that is where those capabilities come in, and customers leverage that to ensure like data locality.
Then Gaurav had another question about all these kind of security mechanisms that we have: firewall, encryption, compliance. I mean, all these security tools and solutions are largely developed in-house by Google or third party?
It's all in-house. And people can have apprehensions when you say in-house because, it's just developed in-house, right? Because you traditionally think back to in-house application development you had done at other customers and things like that. But remember that this in-house technology has like 20 years of testing against Google properties against it. So
plus billions of users using it, right? I mean, we have a billion users, and if you count across the products, we have maybe 8 billion across the major products. It's been well tested, and many of these are standards, right? I mean, like TLS, SSL, like all these security kind of mechanisms are all standards. It's just how we implement it and adding additional security mechanisms on top of that.
Yep. So we talked about the KMS. I think I kind of went ahead of our slides. We were talking about KMS, where you actually store your slides keys as well. So we have around 600 plus security engineers which we employ. We spend more than $2 billion in annual security investments. We publish academic research papers on security. We have published multiple white papers specific to Google Cloud, which we will be sharing on the chat. And
bounties are a big thing these days. Do we do bounties at all?
Yes, we do. We do offer bounties. I think I have a slide for here somewhere.
Perfect.
Yeah, we do offer bounties. We do vulnerability tests on a regular basis. We have a completely distributed engineering and delivery team, which is focused on the end-to-end life cycle of a data center. Since we design and what we build, right from concept all the way into operations, we have complete control over what we do. And it's all Googlers at our facilities 24/7. So we have extensive monitoring systems which monitor every single parameter in our data centers. If you think about, say, our cooling towers, our security, our energy usage, all of that is monitored. And we actually use machine learning to optimize the operation of a data center using this data as well. So typically in the industry, most of the time, our security issues are caused by human error. Somebody starts up a server on a default port and forgets to secure it. Right? That's something which happens so constantly. Uh, Based on the metrics which we had over the last 2 years, we have only like 15% of incidents which were caused by human error. And none of our errors resulted in a Google data center downtime. So as we said, everywhere in the stack, right from our chips, servers, network to applications, everything is secured and built by us. So that is where patching of the stack and maintaining the stack is much more easier for us.
Yeah, one thing that I think that I find very interesting is I think Google's stance on kind of operations is automate the beep out of everything.
Yep.
Like everything you can, we automate it. And there's a reason. Like if you look at this graph right here, root causes of incidents is a lot of it is human error. So what we do is we try to automate everything. Like, I mean, even the silliest things from even as a employee, just ordering things for myself, like a like a laptop or something. Everything is just automated. So the theme or the vision of what we do here is just automate as much as possible, reduce the amount of human interaction with with the machines, and reduce the amount of human error that's even possible.
Yeah, and it goes back to even the day-to-day activities which we do, right? As Googlers, even when we are doing work from home, we don't even use a VPN.
Yeah, that's right.
Because traditionally, VPNs are, once you connect a VPN, you have access to every other system. At Google, we don't trust people that way. Essentially, we verify every single request that comes in. The concept is called Beyond Corp, and part of it is something called Identity Aware Proxy, which actually we made it available for our customers as well. It's available in the Google Cloud Stack, which customers can use to front their applications, so that you're not just relying on some VPN connection to authenticate your users.
Yeah, especially if you're using App Engine, IAP is really interesting because it automatically provides authentication and authorization for your applications with zero setup. It's completely managed.
Yep.
So I have customers that are using App Engine. They want to provide specific users with specific access to their App Engine apps, and literally it's a checkbox, right? It's like a checkbox that says, "Hey, I want to enable this." You choose the users who want access, and that's it. That's like a two-step process to provide authentication.
And actually, now the IAP can be used with any HTTPS service which you want, a backend service you want to use, not just App Engine.
Yeah, sorry, I'm an App Engine fan.
So we follow the model of trust but verify. We have a bug bounty program, which Jonathan was asking about earlier. And we do penetration testing constantly on our side as well to ensure that we are conforming to the highest security standards possible.
So Gaurav has another question, and really, Gaurav, I mean, I appreciate your interaction. This is great. This is why we have these online meetups, is for you to ask questions. So the question is, AWS handles much more customer data. So how do you compare with that cloud security? And I think my first response with that is, I would argue that they handle more data than us.
If you count all our properties, like YouTube and all of that, I don't think they handle as much data as us.
Yeah, I doubt that they have 1 billion users. I mean, 8 billion users of data. But I mean, and even if they did, I think Balaji touched on, like, maybe you can expand on kind of a summary of kind of all the different things from hardware to software, just the end-to-end security stack plus the network.
Yeah, one thing I don't think which AWS talks about much, it's not completely clear to me, like to what extent of their hardware do they build and do they own? Essentially, are they building off-shelf hardware and like customizing it? Right now, case we don't buy anything essentially apart from processors, which we buy a whole lot of. We don't buy network chipsets or anything like that. We build our own. So that is, I think, one of the key differentiators, and also the way our architecture is, right? As far as deploying applications, the whole notion of how our VMs are run, how our individual applications are run, because we are uh, very much focused on compartmentalizing things so that if something breaks, it's kind of contained. So from that standpoint, I think we follow a much cleaner architecture as far as our infrastructure is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and I'm guessing that uh, AWS, I'm not sure if they do build their
Build
own
it.
hardware. I mean, that's something that you can go research, but I mean, maybe Balaji, you can explain why building our own hardware is actually more secure
Sure.
than buying off the shelf, right? And I think I know the answer, but you're the expert.
Not the expert. I just read about these things.
Just Google search.
Yeah, yeah. So the reason for that is, say for instance, if you discover a vulnerability in a network switch, say if you brought it from Cisco, now you are reliant on Cisco to provide you with a patch to fix that issue. So you have to work with them, get the patch, get it in your data center, test it out, and then release it into your production, right? As opposed to us, where we can go ahead and fix it and push it out into production at a much rapid rate. I think that is where the advantage of owning your own hardware comes in.
I guess the other thing is also when you build your own hardware, you're only building what you actually need. Whereas when
Exactly.
you buy, let's say, an out of the box, off the shelf hardware, I mean, they have extra USB ports that you might never use, things that are kind of add to the security footprint.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, especially both on the hardware side as well as the software which runs on top of it, because commercial equipment is built for a wide base of customers to cater to a wider use case. So they will have a lot more bells and whistles on it, which on a feature side, which are nice, but also at the same time, they are also more open to vulnerability. So having that, which purpose built hardware is offers an advantage to us as well. Right. So a lot of our customers use Chrome as well. I think Chrome is a key part of our Google Cloud offering as well, which allows you to manage devices and control who uses what. Because if you look at a lot of the educational institutions, they're heavily adopting Chromebooks and Chrome because they don't have to worry about application upgrades and things like that. They just open it, log in, and they're ready to use, right? Especially in schools which are so strapped for resources. They don't want to have yet another thing to worry about, which is like updating and patching their laptops and computers. So that's where Chrome offers a huge advantage. As well as, Chrome also offers you cross-platform mobile device management, whether it is Android, iOS, or Google Sync. So what are we doing? How do we think about challenges in data production today? So one of the key things which we constantly get asked about is, you guys are a consumer company. What do you guys know about the enterprise, right? So that is where in the last few years, we have focused heavily on enterprises, especially from a focus on the kind of transparency which enterprises need, as well as providing enough data to them so that they can analyze what kind of usage they have and secure themselves better. Uh, in addition to that, we also uh, focus on the certifications which we have gone through. I'll go through a list of the certifications here shortly. So, and we have also made sure that we work with our biggest enterprise customers to establish contracts in such a way that it caters to what they need. Because a lot of our enterprise customers have their own customer base which they cater to, and they have several liability concerns when it comes to that. So our contracts try to make sure that we address those concerns and make them part of it, so that we work as a partner with that customer rather than just being a vendor to them. And we like to say, you are the data controller, and we are just a data processor. You control and own the data. Uh, One of the interesting things which is coming up in 2018 is GDPR, that stands for the General Data Privacy Regulation. It goes into effect March or May of 2018. What that means is that previously companies which did business in Europe could get away with having data location tweaks, in the sense that if their data is not residing in Europe, they could get away with a lot of stuff. With the GDPR, those regulations go away. So it wouldn't matter if you're a company doing business in Europe, but your data is sitting in US, you're still bound by the GDPR regulations. And this GDPR, one of the key aspects of GDPR is around informing customers about data breaches. So I think it boils down to, if you don't inform a customer of a data breach within 72 hours of a breach, I think you could be fined as high as 4% of your annual revenue. For Google, that's a lot. So we published a blog post recently about our commitment to GDPR. And when GDPR goes into effect, we'll be fully compliant with that. This is a key requirement for anybody who's just doing business in Europe.
Yeah, this is huge. I think, I mean, obviously, it's a testament to how much businesses and just how much economy is going towards digital, getting digitalized. So, I mean, it's good for consumers, right? But it gives a little more work for companies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So based on our contracts, which we have verified with our data protection authorities in Europe, they have confirmed that we are compliant with whatever international data flow requirements they have. And GDPR is coming. So if you are somebody who is looking to use the cloud, and you're also catering to a customer who's going to be doing business in Europe, definitely talk to them about GDPR, because that is an absolutely vital regulation which is going to hit businesses, and that will be being compliant to that is going to be vital to every single business. I think Azure also announced similar support to GDPR. We published a blog post. We will share that blog post on the chat shortly. Yeah, so the Tesco Bank hack, which happened a while back, based on GDPR, they could be facing a $1.9 billion fine.
That's some pocket change there.
That is.
That's in pounds too.
That's in pounds too.
So,
Yeah, 1.9 pounds would be what, quite a bit of money. So as you see, like, a lot of customers are still unaware of GDPR. So make sure you speak to them about that, because that could be a business saver for them. And the interesting thing is, there are a lot of things which we are doing from a capability standpoint on the software side as well, which actually caters to that. I think one of the key things is the DLP API, which we released during Google Next. DLP API stands for the Data Loss Prevention API, which allows you to find out sensitive pieces of information and data, and redact them or classify them and do things like that. So that allows you to understand what is your risk exposure as far as data is concerned, and negate that if you choose to do so. So I think that'll play a key part in a lot of customers achieving GDPR compliance.
So Balaji, I mean, we're going to get kicked out of this room in like 10 minutes. So
Okay.
I know there's some good questions here. Sandeep has a question about, I mean, how are you ensuring data protection to comply with GDPR? That's question number one. Question number two is, what kind of data encryption, if any, will GCP implement? And we talked about, maybe we just go with the second one first, because we talked about kind of encryption at rest and in transit.
Yeah. So as we talked about earlier, all data on Google Cloud is encrypted in rest and transit. We don't write data to disk until it's encrypted. So as I mentioned earlier, we take data and break it up into smaller chunks, encrypt each one of them with its own individual key, wrap those keys with another encryption key, and then there's a whole chain of encryption which happens. So just because you got access to one piece of that chunk does not mean you'll be able to recreate any of that. So that's a key part of it. I think the encryption white paper, which we put in the chat, has key details around it.
Yep. I sent the link.
Regarding what we are doing via GDPR, I think that blog post is pretty detailed,
Okay.
and we can share that with the listeners.
I'll send that out, Sandeep, the GDPR. It's a big thing. I mean, obviously, a lot of our European customers are definitely asking about it. So, and there's a lot of aspects about it.
Cool. And these are some of the third-party certifications which we have available. So a lot of the information around this is available on our website as well. We'll publish a link to that. So take a look at it, and you can see the various things which we are doing to be compliant with that.
Sandeep asked another question. Bring your own key option. Bring your own key. Yep, Sandeep. Yep. You can bring your own key. You must have joined a little late, which is fine. I'm glad you're here. And for those of you who didn't know, you can actually go back to this link and watch this at any time. So yeah, no, these are great questions, and questions that are definitely many customers ask. I am curious if anybody out there is listening, what type of certifications you need for your business. I'd be curious if you could respond in the chat. We're always interested in seeing what's out there and who wants, what certifications are needed. I mean, there are a lot of certifications around the country, some that I've never even heard of, right?
Yeah.
And some of us joke like, oh, these are run by the mafia, because we've never heard of them. There's very little information about it, but
absolutely,
the company says, oh, we need it. Someone says we need it. So we're always interested in hearing about different.
Yeah, I think a few weeks back, somebody asked me about this CFR part. I forget the last part of it now, but that certification, I think that is very specific to manufacturing companies. So
interesting.
Yeah,
that is interesting. All right, 5 more